Today, I'm going over the section in Chapter 7 called The Extension of the Kingdom. Only you can limit your creative power, but God wills to release it. He no more wills you to deprive yourself of your creations than he wills to deprive himself of his. Okay, so only we can limit our creative power. How do we do that? By choosing ego, by allowing ourselves to default into the ego framework, by not making the effort to choose spirit. That is how we limit our creative power. He says, but God's will is to release it. So God's will is for us to release our false belief in the ego, to release our limit on ourself. So he's saying he wants us to choose spirit and not ego. Do not withhold your gifts in the sonship, or you withhold yourself from God. So when he says don't withhold your gifts from the sonship, he means don't not forgive. In other words, forgive. Because when we forget to forgive, we're not only not giving everyone else a gift, but then we're not giving the gift to ourselves. So if we exile everyone else from God, the kingdom, from spirit, we are then exiling ourselves, is what he's telling us. And that means we are withholding ourselves from God. Now, we can't really do that, but we're dreaming that we're doing that, and we're believing in our dream. Selfishness is of the ego, but self-fullness is of spirit, because that is how God created it. The Holy Spirit is in the part of the mind that lies between the ego and the spirit, mediating between them always in favor of spirit. So he's reminding us again that Holy Spirit is the voice for God within the dream. Holy Spirit can be aware of both worlds, the dream world and our real world, the kingdom. That's Holy Spirit's job. Remember, God's not here. God knows nothing of this world. We're having a dream that God is not aware of because it's not real. But Holy Spirit is the memory of God, or the voice for God within our dream. And his function is to help us awaken. So he's here within our dream whispering to us, hey, I'm here. Wake up to your truth. And when we're quiet and we listen, we can hear that voice. That's his job. That's what he's doing. And he's asking us to choose spirit. So the reason that ego is selfish is because it's not sharing. The ego isn't sharing forgiveness. It's not sharing our truth. The ego is excluding, right? Projecting and excluding. So that's selfishness. But spirit is self-fullness because it comes from God. It is creation. So that's why he's saying that Holy Spirit is mediating between ego and spirit, and always in favor of spirit, because he wants us to choose spirit. To the ego, this is partiality, and it responds as if it were being sided against. To spirit, this is truth, because it knows its fullness and cannot conceive of any part from which it is excluded. So ego's always going to try to tell us that our truth is a lie, but it's lying to us. The spirit part of ourselves knows that it is our truth. And that's why he says to spirit, this is truth, because it knows its fullness and cannot conceive of any part from which it is excluded. Because when we are identified with spirit, nothing and no one is excluded, because there's only one of us. Spirit knows that the awareness of all its brothers is included in its own, as it is included in God. So again, talking about the oneness, and as long as we know about the oneness and we perceive the oneness, that includes everyone. Us, our brothers, and God. And again, ignore the male labels. They mean everyone. The power of the whole sonship and of its creator is therefore spirit's own fullness, rendering its creations equally whole and in equal perfection. We are equally whole and equally perfect in spirit. The ego cannot prevail against a totality that includes God. And any totality must include God, he says. Because only truth is true. Only God is real. We are one. We are one with God. That is the totality of our truth. That is the totality of our reality. Everything he created is given all his power because it is part of him and shares his being with him. Beautiful words to just say we're all one. We are all one. Creating is the opposite of loss, as blessing is the opposite of sacrificing. Okay, creating comes from God, creating comes from spirit. So therefore it's the opposite of loss, because creation, God, spirit, is about wholeness, oneness, inclusion, totality. There is no loss. And spirit is a blessing. He says, which is the opposite of sacrifice. Sacrifice is what the ego expects. Sacrifice is what we do when we are identified with the ego. And we think we have to sacrifice in order to get something from our ego framework, but it's not true. Being must be extended. That is how it retains the knowledge of itself. That means practicing forgiveness. We have to extend the knowledge, extend the love, extend our identification with spirit, extend it out to others. How do we do that? In our mind, by how we perceive others. It has nothing to do with our words. It has nothing to do with what we tell people. It has everything to do with how we are perceiving ourselves and others in our mind. So when we do that, that is how it retains the knowledge of itself, by the sharing, by us acknowledging we are spirit and everyone else is spirit. That's how we keep our truth in our mind. Spirit yearns to share its being as its creator did, right? That's how God created us. He extended his love to create us. Now we, because we are the same as God, have the same desire to extend love. That's why when we do that with our brothers, it heals us, because then we are doing what we have always desired to do, which is to be spirit extending love eternally. Created by sharing, its will is to create. What I just said, we were created by sharing, therefore we will to create, which means extending love. It does not wish to contain God, but wills to extend his being. The extension of God's being is spirit's only function. That's it. That's our only function, is to extend God's love, which is God's being. Its fullness cannot be contained any more than can the fullness of its creator. Fullness is extension, he says. Okay, so it means the same thing. Fullness, love, extension, spirit, light, they all mean the same thing. The ego's whole thought system blocks extension and thus blocks your only function. Ego is always attempting to block out spirit. It therefore blocks your joy so that you perceive yourself as unfulfilled. Okay, that's ego's whole objective. Block out God, block out the joy, feel unfulfilled, feel bad so that you keep thinking that the solution to that is to project it out, and then that keeps the world going round, and that keeps us all trapped in the ego's thought system. So that's why ego's objective is to block out God and block our joy. Unless you create, you are unfulfilled. But God does not know unfulfillment, and therefore you must create. All right, so when he says, unless you create, you are unfulfilled, he doesn't mean the world's version of create, like creating art or a business or any of the things that we think we're creating in this world. He doesn't mean that. He means God's version of creation, which is extending love. That's what he means. So unless we extend love, we are not fulfilled. That is our desire and our true function. So then he says, but God doesn't know unfulfillment, right? Because it doesn't exist. Unfulfillment doesn't exist. The ego doesn't exist. And therefore you must create, because our only true existence is spirit, is extending love, is creation. That's the only thing that really exists. You may not know your own creations, But this can no more interfere with their reality than your unawareness of your spirit can interfere with its being. So he's basically saying you can lie to yourself all you want, you can block it out all you want, you can pretend all you want that you're ego, but it doesn't change your truth that you are spirit and you desire to create, which means to extend love eternally. That doesn't change. The kingdom is forever extending because it is in the mind of God. You do not know your joy because you do not know your own self-fullness. Exclude any part of the kingdom from yourself and you are not whole. Okay? Judge a person, judge something out in the world, and boom, you're not whole. You've just gone right back into the ego where you feel separate. A split mind cannot perceive its fullness and needs the miracle of its wholeness to dawn upon it and heal it. Beautiful words to mean practicing forgiveness. That is what our split mind needs in order to heal. This reawakens the wholeness in it and restores it to the kingdom because of its acceptance of wholeness. So the more we reinforce spirit, the more we will feel our wholeness. We will experience it. And we will be restoring our split mind back into wholeness. The full appreciation of the mind's self-fullness makes selfishness impossible and extension inevitable. That is why there is perfect peace in the kingdom. More beautiful words to say that when we release the false ego and accept our truth as spirit, we are healed. Spirit is fulfilling its function, and only complete fulfillment is peace. Your creations are protected for you because the Holy Spirit, who is in your mind, knows of them and can bring them into your awareness whenever you will let him. All right, our creations are protected by Holy Spirit. It's Holy Spirit's job to be in our dream, whispering our truth to us so that we will awaken and return back home to God, to heaven, which is the state of oneness. So when we're identified with spirit, we thought we lost our protection. We thought we lost God and the kingdom. We think we're unsafe, but Holy Spirit is protecting our truth. That's why he's the memory of God, the voice for God, here to remind us within our dream where we're so lost, believing that we lost everything. So that's why he's protecting our creations. And he's telling us that we just need to let Holy Spirit in order to heal ourselves. That's it. They are there as part of your own being because your fulfillment includes them. That's a tricky way of saying we are Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit is us. We are all one. The creations of every son of God are yours, since every creation belongs to everyone, being created for the sonship as a whole. There's only one of us, okay? I know it appears that there's billions of people out there, but there's only one of us. You have not failed to increase the inheritance of the sons of God, and thus have not failed to secure it for yourself. So even though it appears that we failed, even though it appears that we are separate and lost in this dream, it never really happened. Since it was the will of God to give it to you, he gave it forever. Since it was his will that you have it forever, he gave you the means for keeping it. Okay, remember, there is no such thing as time. There's only the now moment. God created us through his extension of love. We desire to do the same because we are one with God, and we actually are doing the same. We are with God right now in heaven, extending love eternally. We just forgot. We're just having a dream that we're not doing that. And so that's why he's saying we will be keeping it forever. We will be doing it forever, no matter what silly dream we're having. He gave us the means for keeping it. The means is Holy Spirit. If we use Holy Spirit to wake up, we will be able to keep this truth for ourselves. And he says in italics, and you have done so. Disobeying God's will is meaningful only to the insane. In truth, it is impossible. Your self-fullness is as boundless as God's. Like his, it extends forever and in perfect peace. Its radiance is so intense, it creates imperfect joy. and only the whole can be born of its wholeness. More beautiful words to say. We've never really done anything. This world isn't really here. We never separated from God. We never split our mind. We're just having a dream that we did that. And that's why he says disobeying God's will is meaningful only to the insane. Only the ego wants to disobey God's will. And it's not disobey like, oh, we have all these harsh rules that we have to obey. No, no, no. It just has to do with extending love, being love. That's it. That is God's will. So when we're disobeying God, it's because we're not extending love for ourselves or for anyone else. That's what disobeying God means. And he's saying it's impossible. It's impossible for us to disobey God. Even though we think we're doing it here, we're not really doing it. Really, we're still at home with God in heaven. Be confident that you have never lost your identity and the extensions which maintain it in wholeness and peace. So he's saying, know that you've never left heaven and you are still one with God. Be confident in your identity as spirit. Miracles are an expression of this confidence. Okay, miracles are an expression of knowing that you and everyone else are spirit. That is the miracle. They are reflections of both your proper identification with your brothers and of your awareness that your identification is maintained by extension. Oh, that's a mouthful. So all those words just mean the same thing I've just said. Practicing forgiveness, knowing that we are spirit, that we are pure love and light, knowing that everyone else is spirit, is pure love and light, maintains our identity. The more we reinforce this within ourselves, the more that we will be in alignment with our true identity and in alignment with God. The miracle is a lesson in total perception. Okay? What does he mean by that? He means not having a split mind, not going back and forth between ego and spirit. Not that that's what he expects us to do right away. It's going to take practice to be able to do that. But that is what the miracle is for. It's a lesson in doing that. And that's why we have to keep practicing, doing it again and again and again, so we can become very good at it and eventually permanently wake up from the dream. By including any part of totality in the lesson, you have included the whole. Okay, because every part, every piece that appears to be in the world is really a part of the whole. There's only one of us, and we only have one reality, which is that we are one with one another in God and that we extend love eternally. That is our truth. That is our reality. That is what the miracle is knowing that, is reinforcing that, is sharing that knowledge by practicing forgiveness. And that is what this course is for awakening from the dream.